A voice broke the silence of the community art room. Small, barely there, almost nothing. But it stopped Stella Rowe mid-stroke, brush still lifted above the paper, because that small sound was the first word Evie Hartley had spoken in 6 months. And standing in the open doorway, still holding his car keys, was Finn Hartley, CEO of Hartley Technologies, Forbes Top 40, a man who ran a $3 billion company before most people finished their morning coffee. Frozen completely still because the voice belonged to his daughter. Go back 15 minutes, that's all you need. Portland was doing its gray thing that Wednesday afternoon. The kind of mist that isn't quite rain but isn't quite not rain either. The kind that makes your hair frizzy and your mood soft at the same time. The Clover Street Community Arts Center smelled like acrylic paint, and something someone had microwaved in the break room that really shouldn't have been microwaved. The fluorescent lights in room 4 flickered every 12 minutes, exactly like clockwork. Stella had started timing it. She was 31, brown-haired, always wearing paint on some part of her body she hadn't noticed yet. Today it was a streak of cadmium yellow on her left wrist. She wore jeans with a fraying hem and a chambray shirt and sneakers that had seen better days. The name tag on her lanyard said Stella, Volunteer, and underneath someone had stickered a small orange cat because the kids thought it was funny, and Stella had left it there because she agreed. She was refilling the water jars for the afternoon kids' session when she noticed the girl in the corner. Most of the other children had already descended into creative chaos. 2 boys were arm wrestling over a purple marker. A pair of twins were making what they called abstract art, and what was actually just smeared handprints across a very large sheet of butcher paper. But the girl in the corner sat apart from all of it. Her sketchbook closed on the table in front of her, her hands folded on top of it like she was protecting it, or maybe like she didn't trust herself to open it. She looked about 7. Brown hair in 2 braids that someone had done carefully that morning, a grown-up's careful work. Dark blue eyes that moved around the room with a kind of watchfulness that no 7-year-old should need to have. A bodyguard Stella hadn't noticed before stood near the door, a big man in an unremarkable jacket, staring at his phone. Evie Hartley. The center coordinator Lou had mentioned her briefly before the session. New kid starting today, she doesn't talk, just go easy. Stella went easy. She finished with the water jars, grabbed a fresh sketchbook and a cup of colored pencils, and pulled a chair up near, but not too near, the girl's table. She didn't say hello, she just sat down and started drawing. She drew a cat. Not a great cat, honestly. A round body, triangular ears, a tail that curved too much, but she drew it slowly, deliberately, in a way a child could watch without feeling like they were being watched themselves. 2 minutes passed. Then a small hand reached across the table and took the yellow pencil from the cup. Stella didn't react, she kept drawing, added whiskers, completely normal. The girl opened her sketchbook, started drawing something Stella couldn't quite see yet. After a while the girl pushed the sketchbook toward her. It was a sun, a yellow sun with long uneven rays, and in the center of it the girl had drawn a tiny person with a ponytail, arms stretched wide. Stella looked at it for a moment, then she reached over and drew a small arrow pointing to the tiny person, and next to the arrow she wrote, "You?" The girl shook her head, drew an arrow of her own. "You," she wrote in careful oversized letters and pointed at Stella. Stella pressed a hand to her chest in exaggerated surprise. The girl almost smiled. Stella pointed at the girl, then back at herself, then drew 2 tiny people side by side under the sun. "Us?" The girl studied the drawing for a long moment. Then she picked up the pencil and, very carefully, added a flower next to the 2 tiny figures. Stella nodded seriously, the way you nod when someone has made a genuinely good artistic decision. "That's better," she said quietly. The composition needed something in the lower left. She wasn't expecting a response. She'd said it almost to herself. But the girl looked up, and in a voice so quiet it barely had any air behind it, she said, "I made it yellow." 2 seconds of absolute silence. Then Stella smiled, the slow kind, not the over-the-top kind, not the kind that would spook her, and said yellow was the right choice. That was the moment Finn Hartley pushed open the door to room 4. He'd come to pick up Evie early. A meeting had wrapped up ahead of schedule, and he'd thought, maybe, he could use the hour. He was still in his work clothes, jacket open, tie pulled slightly loose, the way it always was by 4 in the afternoon. Tall, dark-haired, the kind of man who walked into rooms with a certain gravity to him, not from arrogance exactly, just from being used to rooms responding when he entered. This room didn't respond to him at all, because every set of eyes that would have turned was looking at Evie. He heard the tail end of it. Yellow was the right choice. And his daughter was sitting there with a small smile on her face, pencil in hand, looking at a volunteer with paint on her wrist like she'd found something she didn't know she'd been looking for. Finn Hartley did not cry in public. He hadn't in quite a long time. But something in his chest cracked open right there in the doorway, because his daughter hadn't spoken in 6 months, and she'd just spoken. And it had happened so quietly, so naturally, like the most ordinary thing in the world, because someone had simply sat down next to her and not pushed. He stood there and did not move. He was afraid that if he did, the spell would break. Stella noticed him eventually, the way you notice a change in air pressure before you notice the thing that caused it. She looked toward the door, saw the suit, the car keys, the frozen expression, saw the tears that were definitely not falling but were thinking about it. She turned back to Evie, pointed toward the door with a small tilt of her head. Evie followed the gesture, saw her father. "Dad," she said, but clear. Finn made it 3 steps into the room before he crouched down to his daughter's level. He didn't say anything. He put his arms around her and she let him, and the bodyguard near the door cleared his throat and studied the ceiling very carefully. Stella stood, moved away to refill water jars that didn't need refilling. She gave them the moment. When Finn straightened up, he looked at her with an expression she recognized from parents. That look of how and thank you and I don't know what to do with this feeling all tangled together. "You're the volunteer," he said. He knew it wasn't a great opener. "I mean, I'm Finn Hartley, that's Evie." "Stella Rowe," she said, "and I know." Lou mentioned her. "What did you do?" There was nothing accusatory in it. He genuinely didn't know. Stella glanced at the sketchbooks on the table. "I drew a cat." He looked at the table, at the 2 small figures under the sun and the yellow flower. "That's it?" "Pretty much." He didn't know what to say to that, so he said, "Thank you," which also wasn't enough, but was at least true. "She did all the work," Stella said. "I just showed up." Finn came back the next afternoon, and the one after that. He didn't have a plan, exactly. He had a vague sense that whatever was happening in room 4 was more important than anything on his calendar. And he was a man who had built a company on knowing which things mattered, so he rearranged things. On the 3rd afternoon, he asked Lou if he could sit in on the session. Lou looked at Stella. Stella shrugged, "Sure." What followed was 20 minutes of Finn Hartley attempting to participate in an art activity for children aged 5 through 10, with the full force of his attention and absolutely none of the necessary skill. The task was to draw your favorite animal. He drew what he intended to be a horse. Evie looked at it, tilted her head left, tilted it right. "What is that?" "It's a horse." He turned it around so she could see it better. This did not help. Stella, who had been trying very hard for 30 seconds, made a sound that was technically a cough. "The legs are different lengths," Evie observed. "Horses have different length legs sometimes." "They really don't, Dad." Stella was now pressing the back of her hand against her mouth. Her shoulders were shaking. "It's impressionistic," Finn said, with as much dignity as a man can manage while holding a crayon drawing that looks like a furniture item in distress. "It's not meant to be literal." "It looks like it's melting," Evie said. She wasn't being unkind about it. She was being honest in the way children are when they haven't yet learned to be politely dishonest. Stella gave up entirely and laughed. A real one, the kind that surprised her, the kind that bent her slightly forward over the table. Finn watched her, then he looked back at his horse, then slowly a real smile appeared on his face, not almost, a real one. "Okay," he said, "it's terrible." Evie giggled. Stella wiped her eyes, and somewhere in the middle of a terrible crayon horse and the laughter it caused, something shifted between the 3 of them. Something that felt like the beginning of a thing that didn't have a name yet, but was unmistakably there. It was Lou who told him, about 3 weeks in, that Stella wasn't just a volunteer. "You know she's Robert Rowe's daughter, right?" Lou said it casually while sorting donation boxes. "The Rowe Arts Foundation, the one that funds half the kids' programs in the city." Finn went very still. "The Rowe Foundation is worth about $180 million, yeah." Lou shrugged. "She's been volunteering here for 4 months under her own name. Asked me not to make a big thing of it, so I didn't." Finn thought about that for the rest of the afternoon. Through dinner, through the bedtime routine with Evie, who now slowly and sometimes haltingly was talking again, small sentences that meant everything. He thought about the paint on Stella's wrist and the way she'd said, "I just showed up," like it was nothing, Like who she was outside this building didn't matter in here. He didn't bring it up. He told himself he was waiting for the right moment. He should have known someone else was waiting for the wrong one. The Hartley Foundation Gala happened every October at the Portland Art Museum. Finn brought Evie because Evie had asked to come, and he brought Stella because Evie had asked for that too, and he was quickly learning that Evie's requests had a way of being exactly right. Diana Hartley, his first cousin and a board member of the Hartley Foundation, found Stella within 20 minutes. Diana was efficient at things like this. She smiled at Stella with every tooth showing. "So you're the art volunteer. Finn talks about you." "He's kind," Stella said carefully. "I'm sure." Diana tilted her champagne glass. "Tell me, the Rowe Foundation, they're expanding their donor portfolio, aren't they? Looking at some of the same corporate sponsors we work with?" "I'm not involved in the administrative side," Stella said. "Of course not." Diana's smile didn't change. "Well, welcome to the family circle." It was only then that Stella understood something was already in motion that she couldn't see yet. 2 days later, Finn received a message from Diana with a photo attached. The photo showed Stella standing near the filing cabinet in Lou's office at Clover Street, a folder visible in her hands, Hartley Foundation letterhead partially visible on the top page. "She was photographing your donor list," Diana wrote. "I had someone watching. This is what you're letting into Evie's life." Finn looked at the photo for a long time. He called Stella. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, were you in Lou's office looking at Hartley Foundation documents?" Silence. Then, "Finn, what?" "I need you to answer the question." The silence that followed was a different kind. "I don't even know what documents you're referring to. I was in Lou's office once last week dropping off a supply order." "There's a photo." He heard her breath change. "A photo of me near a file cabinet isn't evidence of anything." "No," he said, "but you're also the heir to a foundation moving into the same donor market as mine, which you didn't tell me." "I didn't tell you because it's not relevant to what I do at that center. It's relevant to me, to Evie." A long pause. "Finn." Her voice was steadier than he deserved. "I would never use your daughter to get to you. I want you to know that." "I don't know what I know right now," he said, and he ended the call. It was Evie who found him in his home office at 11 that night, sitting in the dark with his laptop open. She stood in the doorway in her pajamas, sleep-rumpled, her 2 braids half undone. She signed. She'd started learning because Stella had taught her that communication could take many forms and none of them were wrong. "Why are you sad?" "I made a mistake," he said, "I think." She padded over, climbed into the chair beside him, looked at the laptop where he'd been staring at Diana's photo for the better part of 2 hours. Evie reached over and pointed at the timestamp in the corner of the photo. Then she pointed at the calendar on the wall where Finn tracked her school schedule. Last Tuesday was circled in red. Evie's school play, which all 3 of them had attended together, 6 miles away from Clover Street from 7 in the evening until well past 9. The timestamp on the photo said 8:47 p.m. Finn looked at his daughter. His daughter looked back at him with the patience of someone who has learned to wait for the people she loves to catch up. "She wasn't there," he said. "She was with us." Evie nodded. He called his legal team. What followed was not subtle. Finn's lawyers pulled Diana's communications inside 48 hours and found the rest of it. The edited metadata, the hired photographer, the draft articles already sent to a PR firm. Diana had been working on this for weeks. Not because she believed Stella was a spy. Because she'd seen the way Finn looked at Stella and understood, before Finn understood it himself, what that would mean for the Foundation Board vote in January. Diana was removed from the board on a Friday morning. The vote was unanimous. Finn waited until it was final before he drove to Clover Street. Room 4 was empty except for Stella, who was cleaning brushes at the sink and didn't hear him come in. "The photo was faked," he said. She turned around. She had a smear of cerulean blue along her jaw she hadn't noticed. "I know," she said. "I figured you'd figure it out." "I should have figured it out before I called you." She set the brushes down. "Yeah, you should have." "I'm sorry." He wasn't someone who apologized easily, not from pride, but because he took it seriously and he meant it to land. "I doubted you twice. I was wrong twice, and you didn't deserve either." Stella looked at him for a long moment. The fluorescent light flickered. 12 minutes, right on schedule. "You have paint on your tie," she said. He looked down. "Cadmium yellow." from the last time Evie had grabbed his sleeve during an art session. "I like it," he said. "It's impressionistic." The corner of Stella's mouth moved, just barely. "That's still not what impressionistic means." "I'm learning." "You are," she said, quieter now. "You really are." He crossed the room. She didn't move away. He stopped close enough to see the cerulean blue on her jaw and resisted the urge to reach over and fix it because he hadn't quite earned that yet. "Can I start over?" he asked. "With all of it, from here?" She considered him the way she considered most things, carefully, without rushing. "You have to learn to draw better," she said finally. That horse was genuinely disturbing. "He real one. I'll take lessons." "I know a volunteer," she said. The foundation gala the following spring was smaller than usual. Finn's choice, a deliberate shift towards something less performance and more substance. It was held at Clover Street in the converted main hall used for larger events. Stella had hung the children's artwork on every wall, full floor-to-ceiling displays, the kind that made grown adults stop and look longer than they expected to. Evie stood beside Stella in a yellow dress, her own choice, holding a program she kept folding and unfolding out of nerves. She was 8 now. She had started speech therapy in January, regular sessions with a therapist she liked, and her voice was more present every week. Not loud, not effortless, but real and hers and growing. When the program reached the point where Finn was supposed to speak, he did something no one expected. He talked about her. Not by name at first. He talked about a child who hadn't spoken for 6 months, and a room that smelled like acrylic paint, and a volunteer who had sat down next to his daughter and drawn a cat and then done the most radical thing imaginable. She'd waited. "She taught me something I thought I already knew," he said. "That showing up is not the same as being present. That listening is not the same as hearing. That sometimes the most important thing you can do for someone is not fill the silence. It's trust them enough to fill it themselves." He looked at Stella, who was standing near the wall of children's artwork holding a cup of sparkling water and doing a poor job of pretending she wasn't affected. "I was slow to understand that," he said. "I made mistakes that cost us both something I hope we've gotten back." He paused. "I think we have." The applause was genuine. Lou cried openly. The bodyguard, Kevin, who had quietly become a regular presence in all their lives, stood in the corner and looked extremely stoic about the whole thing. Evie tugged Stella's sleeve and signed. "He practiced that 3 times in the kitchen this morning." Stella pressed her lips together and signed back. "I know, I could hear him from the hallway." Evie's shoulders shook. Stella put an arm around her, and the two of them stood against that wall of bright, chaotic, unrestrained children's art, laughing quietly at the man they both loved, who had learned slowly and imperfectly and with real effort how to be present in a room. Finn walked back from the podium and found them there by the wall. The 3 of them stood together in the noise and the light, and outside the Portland fog was doing its soft gray thing, and inside every drawing on the wall was proof that the smallest act of showing up. A blank sketchbook, an open chair, a cat drawn badly but with full attention, could reach someone that nothing else could reach. Sometimes love begins with a crayon and a little room to breathe, and sometimes that's all it ever needed to be.